As you're probably aware, Tesla has a real chance to completely, revolutionize transportation in this world. And I'm actually not even talking about the transition to electric vehicles. I'm talking about this potential for a future in robotaxi. So the questions I want to find out more about is, how close are we? Are we on the way? And when it does happen, what is it going to be the impact to Tesla's stock, to Tesla's revenue? And then hopefully in the end, I'd actually like to kind of think about and dream a little bit about what's going to change in our lives and the cities. So to answer these two questions, I invited the two people that I think in this world, arguably, are the closest to having the closest eyes to the development of Tesla's full self-driving. And they've been kind of like playing and testing with it and are becoming quite famous because of this. So everyone say hello to Chuck Cook and to Robert Scoble.
That's
guys. So yeah, we were just talking that you were annual general meeting just a few days ago, Chuck, and Elon called you out. So yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, wow, yeah. So I was able to make it down to Austin. I squeezed 2 work weeks in this week, and then headed down to Austin the night before. I just have to say, and met a lot of really fun people. I tell you, it's such a great community. And there was a woman that was standing next to me in line while we were waiting to go do the very quick 15-minute tour of the factory. And she said something that resonated with me. And she was like, when you come to these things, everybody's your cousin, and that's such a true statement because, you may not know them all by name, but you all can immediately have something in common and you feel like you're with a group that you can get along with. And whether it was the Clive Bar, or, a couple of other places we rendezvoused, it almost just didn't matter. If you were wearing a hat or a shirt that had a T on it, people would walk up to you and you all knew why you were there and why you were getting together. But to get back to the the shareholder meeting, it was about 900 people. They had seating for 900, which was the largest. And I think they're really proud to be getting in-persons going again. And I think it really resonated in Elon's face when he took the stage. And I have to say, several of us noticed he looked a lot better. He looked healthier. He was in a great mood. And I think Rob Maurer commented on that on his video already. And you could really feel the energy. And obviously the crowd was pumping him up too. It's like a rock concert for him when you get people in front of him. And I think the deck was good. There wasn't a whole lot of new information, as you probably watched the videos already. Maybe a little bit of a teaser about the factories coming out and the acceleration of that. And that really gives some momentum and data behind the scaling that they have as part of their scaling plan for the master plan coming up. Seeing the 1,000 a week or so, whatever the actual number is coming out of Giga Texas, it was we got to walk and see them a live factory. They didn't shut down the factory for us, and just a few 20, 30 feet away, there were cars having the instrument clusters installed and stuff like that. It was really exciting. But then when he got to the FSD deck, he said, how many FSD testers do we have out there? And believe it or not, just about everybody in that room raised their hands. It was like cheering. Yeah. And then, of course, they started talking, and then he teased it into 1013. And when he said, and we're going to fix Chuck's turn. And then I stood up and I was like, yes. And then, of course, he looked over there and was kind of like, acknowledged me visually. And then he said, I think we're going to get it to 90%, which, he struggled to say 90% in my mind. He was kind of like, and then he said, well, it works for me. And so I'm kind of like, hey, I'm not going to, nitpick what I think. We'll just wait till I get it. But I did, kind of get a hint. I think they're working on some functions. They're definitely working on median behavior. They're working on some creeping behavior. I think they got some new visualizations coming. I'm kind of putting all of these little pieces together, and I think we're going to have a lot of great features. There was a lot of fun on his commenting about it being labeled 10.69 and whether or not that implies this amazing feature like 69s are, or whether or not it was just there have been so many changes since the last one that it should be on .69. So I guess you can take out of that comment what you want. But
he does a lot of magician distraction. He'll get you to pay attention over here while he's slipping dates over here. And we're all happy about that.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool, Chuck, that he actually called you out. And at one point in that presentation, he talked to you directly, right? He goes, you.
He did. Yeah. Once I stood up, he kind of turned and shifted, and we kind of were, nodding at each other. Obviously, the cameras weren't on me as much as they were on him, but it was obvious that he knew I was there. And I was sort of hoping there was going to be
your turn, by the way. When people talk about your turn, I've seen the videos you've posted, so I have a pretty good idea of what your turn is. But what is this turn that we all are trying to have FSD?
Yeah, so I guess for the group that might not know, if you're watching this, it's an unprotected left turn, which is just basically a turn with a stop sign, and then as the driver, you don't have a light to stop the other traffic for you. You've got to find your gap, and you've got to get across and merge in between traffic. And looking left on this one specific turn, and if you're interested, go to my YouTube channel, at Chuck Cook, and I've described it in detail. It's just, and that way you could look at a video representation of it. But the challenge on my specific turn is a little bit of an obstruction, and I'm not going to say that is the problem with this turn, because you can slowly creep out far enough and safely not be in the road, and the B-pillar can see. It's 60-mile-an-hour traffic that is the issue with this turn. So the camera, like a human, is having to look down to the left and find the right gap, and then when it sees the gap, proceed and cross into a median and wait for the right traffic, and then continue on and join that right traffic that's also going about 60 miles an hour. The challenges with it are, in my opinion, and this is obviously opinion-based because I'm not on the full self-driving development team, the B-pillar camera has a Tesla stated range of 80 meters, and at 60 miles an hour, that's about 3.4 seconds. So that's the amount of time they have from theoretically image detection all the way through impact. So if you're going to back off impact a little bit with a buffer, you got only a couple seconds to do that determination. And I think that's what the team's doing with their optimizations and trying to increase the frame rates a little bit. Elon commented on that, and just tighten it up as fast as they can, if they can get it at 60 miles an hour. There's rumors of new resolution cameras coming out that could give additional range for vision. And then, of course, there's some obstruction type scenarios that,
how many feet is 80 meters? And I thought that the new version that I saw, they're actually
meters around 3 feet. Right?
3 feet, so 100. Yeah,
there's about 260 or 270 feet, something like that, is about where that is. And there was a gentleman, I'll give him a shout out here, Reese. He drove up the other day in his refreshed Model S, and he was doing the turn, and I saw a car out there driving around, and I jumped in his Model S, and I was coaching him on how to do the turn. And if you watch my videos, I've got the trees laser range. So there's the fourth tree you can see in my videos is 80 meters.
Gotcha.
So as a human, when you're doing the turn, if you look at that fourth tree and pretend like you couldn't see beyond it, it would be hard. So I estimate that as a human, I look about 4 times that range when I first start to identify gaps with the angle. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe processing power will be superhuman at some point.
So you don't believe it when he says we think that we're about 90% solving this unprotected left turn?
So most engineering problems can get to about 90%, and the last 10% can take 90% of the time, just because you're starting to get towards those nines, and you got to really work towards the hard part. Because usually when you get to that last 10%, you're now talking about critical paths, constraints, and things that you just can't solve easily. So I don't doubt that 90% could be achievable here. I have a hunch when I get it, it's not going to succeed 90% of the time unless it has some logic to not even try it and just wait. If it starts trying it, we'll see. Hey, right now my hit rate's between 30 and 60%, depending on the traffic density. If it goes all the way to 90% in median traffic, I'll be really, really happy. So, but adding median logic is just another tool to help it get it right. That's so adding a function.
This will help a wide variety of left turns as well. This kind of works. So I drove on a roundabout last night. It still doesn't handle roundabouts all that well. And so, that's really a big left turn, right? So,
So, Robert, you've watched so many technologies develop over the decades. You've got the closest eye. I love the fact that you were saying that Apple Siri was born in your son's bedroom.
Yeah, I was the first one to see it. Siri. I was the first one to have an autonomous car.
You were the first to drive Teslas.
A video of the Google self-driving car on YouTube.
And even that. So you were the first to drive Tesla's first car, and you were the first to drive autonomous car.
No.
Yeah.
Elon gave me a ride. I didn't get your car.
That's even better. That's even better. But my point was that you watch all these technologies.
He was racing his best friend in a Corvette back in serial model number 1, the original Roadster, and I was filming it on a Nokia phone.
Nice.
So,
You've watched all these technologies develop over trends. So with FSD, what's your take on how fast it's progressing, and is it even moving forward? And some people think that it's actually stalled a bit.
No. Well, it can seem stalled because we were getting such a rapid iteration of updates there for a while, like 2 years ago. I mean, literally every week my car was getting updated. And now the time is about a month right now, right? Since the last update.
It's 2 months. So we're 65 plus days now. Yeah.
So it's been a while. And so the iteration is slowing down, but the target on the back is getting bigger too, because, if this thing kills somebody else, it just gets a lot of attention. We don't want that. So I'm not too unhappy that they're slowing down their release cycles and taking more time with this stuff, because it really can cause some problems. Yeah.
So where are we at now?
The number of miles driven, they stated, was over 40 million now, and that's because they've got the beta group just so large. And if they are going to expand it to everyone by the end of this year, like Robert says, they need to be careful. It's a large data set that somebody could get hurt if there's a bug in there that gets to everybody quickly.
What's your thought on the goal of 100 million miles by the end of this year and 200,000, currently 200,000 beta users?
That makes sense as they expand the FSD beta into their entire fleet, because most people still don't have it yet, right? So, it's still a small number of owners that has the full self-driving beta.
So, Chuck, as a airline pilot and your current job there, are you freaking out? Are you going, this is not ready? I would not do this if you're running the show?
I would not be doing it the way Elon's doing it. I personally. Now, that does not mean that it isn't the better way to go. And I will say I've watched a lot of serial entrepreneurs over my career, and without taking risk, you usually never succeed. And so over-conservatism can actually hold you back. So I'm not going to be the judge on the level of risk that's required for this to succeed. And I would honestly trust Elon's judgment. I worked for another serial entrepreneur, David Nealman, a long time ago. And, there's just some things that those guys have the guts to do that I sit there and go, man, I don't know if I'd have done that. And Elon's got a handful of those stories in his career, right? And they're fun to talk about and read about and watch the documentaries on. But to Robert's point, I want to clarify. I think what Elon has said very clearly now, just to not let anyone misunderstand it.
Right.
They are releasing full self-driving to everyone that has paid for it or subscribes to it. I think it is basically going to be the elimination of the safety score. So if you subscribe to it, you're going to go into the autopilot settings. You're going to be able to sign up, which will give you a new build. Your build that you have right now won't be the same. So it's not like you're going to be able to turn it on and turn it off. Once you turn it on, you're going to get another build in a few days or some period of time, and now you'll have the beta build. If it's not for you, you'll be able to opt out of it, and then you'll get another build that'll be the production build again. So it's not going to be just like NOA, turning it on and off and setting it in a profile. But I think it's just basically they're not going to require you to play the safety score game in order to get it. Yeah. I think that safety score thing was the NHTSA's kind of, hey, look, this is how we're controlling the slow release. We're going to get some more data. Now that I think they're starting to feel comfortable with the data they have, probably by the end of the year to let, if you've paid for it, have it. Hopefully they're there. They've got the data to ensure the metrics are probably tolerably safe.
Gotcha. Yeah. So, Robert, I saw this tweet just this morning, actually, from a Tesla Q. And it's the first time I've ever seen this. They called it fake self-driving. And so what percentage do you think, is this deceptive marketing? Do you think that people who own a Tesla actually thinks that it's full self-driving autonomy as opposed to a beta and actually just, helping it learn? And you got to
No, it's pretty clear when you turn it on what it is. And you, if you use it for a few minutes, you realize it's making mistakes here and there that this is not ready for humanless driving. We're in an interim period of training the system. The system is learning at a very fast rate. The cars now are uploading, if they're in the full self-driving beta, they're uploading 25 to 35 gigs a day of data to the Dojo computer that's processing this stuff. That's a huge amount of data for it to be ingesting and learning from. So we're about to, we now have a pretty good idea. I mean, my car drove down to Oakland last night, and that's an hour and a half drive each way. And it had very few interruptions, where you had to grab a hold of the wheel or take control of the car.
Yeah.
When you start looking at how many mistakes per mile is it making, it's going down at a pretty constant rate. Mm-hmm. And it's the rate of improvement that is really amazing about AI.
So Robert says
AI,
the rate of improvement. What do you think, Chuck? What are you measuring for progress?
Things like, does it navigate into the right lane, right? And right now, once in a while, it doesn't do that well. So, Chuck's left-hand turn, how well does it go across, 3 lanes of traffic? How confident does it feel? Does it spin the wheel? Does it do anything that a human is like freaking out inside the car because it's about to get hit, stuff like that, right? And so all of which, by the way, we're training the system. That's why it wanted good drivers at the beginning, because we're actually helping the system get better by when we do grab a wheel in terror and take control of the car. It's then learning what freaked the human out at this point. Why did they take control? And they can go back through the simulator and retrain the system to handle it better the next time.
Yeah.
Here's really one reason I'm so passionate about this. In high school back in the 70s, I marched next to a woman named Lisa Forrester, and she was hit in front of the school one night, killed. And the next year, a stoplight got put up at that intersection, still there in front of Prospect High School in Saratoga. But that's a linear learning system that made that one intersection safer for human beings. With AI, when they retrain the AI, like it killed the Apple engineer, right?
Yes.
It drove him into the barrier about 4.5 years ago, killed him. At that one intersection, Mike Tesla drives through that intersection a lot. It now has gotten completely different than it was 4 years ago. It's way smoother, way more confident, and it never grabs into the median which got this guy killed anymore. So they retrained the system based on that one accident, and the entire fleet gets better. It's an exponential learning system. So the next time an accident gets reported or a mistake gets reported by us grabbing the wheel or whatever, it goes in a queue and they fix those at a pretty regular rate. So over time, we have fewer and fewer mistakes. Yeah. So how many more years do we need to outperform any human being with this technology? Is it 4 years? Is it 2? Is it 6? It's somewhere in that window. And so when this gets done, it's going to save tens of thousands of lives per year in the United States alone.
Yeah. So Chuck, what's your measure? So why are you doing unprotected left turn? Is it what Robert was saying, which is let's solve unprotected left turn, let's solve roundabouts, let's solve these things, and then that's how you're measuring it, or is there some very specific metric you're following?
Well, obviously, my metric is it's a gut feel. I'm not applying data maps to say the rate of improvement, but generally, I'm feeling it. I'm sticking with unprotected lefts in about the 4 or 5 scenarios I have, just for consistency of the content on my channel. I'm not trying to just be spread out everywhere. I do have some standard drives that I do over and over and over, so you can compare them against each other over the last 2 years, which I think is beneficial for those that want to go back and do that. But to Robert's point about the exponential rate, I agree with it. It is improving very, very quickly in the things that they have built networks for. So lane management and things like that, they've got the networks there. They're detecting lanes good. It's handling that better. But some of the things that they're just not working on right now, like parking lots, guess what? It's not getting any better parking lots because they're not working on that right now. They haven't even built the stack to do that yet. The unprotected left, I think they have the lateral movement down, but this is like a tweaking of the networks they have, adding functionality with new networks to handle medians that they didn't have before, and then tweaking that out. So they're going to have to move from some of these larger concepts back and forth. But the things that it has, it is. But there's some weird, unintuitive things that aren't getting better, like turn signals. Weirdly, are just coming on at weird times.
Really?
And I think what this is fringes of different systems. So the combination of vision and planner merging at decision points, I think creates some of this variability. So if the planner says, hey, you need to be in the right lane, and vision's like, well, I can't yet. Somebody's got to decide who's in charge. And then am I going to slow down to make it happen, or how much time do I have to make it happen? If you notice on Navigate and Autopilot, pretty consistently at the 2 mile point, if you need to be in the right lane to take the next exit, it gets over. FSD doesn't quite do it that way, and I think this is just the way they're building this single stack kind of mentality, and the planner and vision, I think, are starting to fight. And I do believe that this new patent coming out for this high precision GPS has a lot to do with making the planner better, because there is an area probability around your location in any GPS system that is not augmented. And that area probability in some areas of the country, I've seen videos where it jumps off the lane and into the woods, and then the planner starts rerouting from you being in the woods and you're actually on the road. We've got to tighten that up and make sure, more than likely when we get these funky things, if you've ever looked at Google Maps, your little blue ring tightens up or gets bigger or tightens up. We don't have that display on the Tesla. I'll bet when some of these funky thing happens, your area probability is actually getting bigger, and the planner and the vision system are having to make decisions from a large area probability. You may be in the right lane, but it may think you're in the far lane, and it's probably just fighting each other just a little bit.
Yeah, I find it actually knows where the lanes are in most of these situations, but it picks the wrong one. And so, and the way the AI is actually working, it's actually figuring out thousands and thousands of different paths through the intersection or whatever you're trying to go through, and tries to pick the best one. And sometimes it just picks one that as a human, it's the wrong one, right?
Yeah. In 1013, we're going to see visually some of those paths, I believe. I think it's going to show us more of what it's thinking. I also think the wrong lane is a combination of two different logics. One of them says, hey, I'm in aggressive or mild mode. There's a stopped car here. Let me go around it. And because it doesn't have radar, it can't see you're in a line of traffic. And the next thing, it gets out of the lane. It's like, oh, wait a minute. I need to get back in here. So it's that combination of the aggressiveness in choosing the wrong lane. And then that was a human would go, no, I need to sit
I guess my point is that has been a case for a year or 6 months and all that. And the question is, are the neural nets learning? And I understand that 6 months ago, 3 months ago, there are continuously many neural nets, and they're continuously deprecating some and adding new ones, and it's supposed to be learning.
This shit never even attempted on when I first got my car.
Of course.
So, it is learning at a pretty fast rate when you compare it over 4 years. What we had as an FSD customer 4 years ago and what we have as a beta tester today is pretty extraordinary. It's just now we are starting to see, okay, there's a lot of things that still need to be done. Parking lots are a whole other thing that I'm wondering when we're going to start seeing a real improvement there.
Yeah, I do want to clarify to the word, just so nobody gets confused. The car is not self-learning in the terms that AI uses. It is not watching our behavior and trying to emulate it or repeat it when it does it well. For it to learn, it takes a labeler or an auto-labeler to capture data. It has to be retrained in the model. That model has to be redeployed with the weights to our cars, and subsequently it will drive based on that model. To get self-supervised learning, Dojo may be part of that in the future, and the data will come in, but we're not doing that at this point. So the new drivers that are maybe driving FSD, please don't think that if you do this turn 3 times, it should do the 5th time correctly. It's not self-learning.
Yeah. Exactly. Maybe 2 years later it will. After that feedback gets
I call that memory, and the memory is not there yet. And the reason, I think, is because they want to optimize vision. They want to make sure that this car learns through vision. So every time you drive that same road, they're going to treat it like it's a brand new. And am I going to recognize everything that I'm seeing? And every time you drive it is different than the last time you drove it. The sun might be a little bit lower. There's obviously different cars and different scenery and so forth. But the car needs to learn, what am I seeing? How am I going to decide what I'm going to do? And they're trying to optimize that. So they don't want to introduce this other thing like memory. I've driven here before. I've seen another Tesla do it, a week ago, and I'll be able to react the same way. They don't want that yet, right?
Yeah. No. Yeah. I do wish they had a thumbs up button, because there are some times I'm like, ooh, I really wish they could take this one as the right choice. Because if a labeler that doesn't live in my area is kind of having to look at me crossing the railroad tracks, and when I tell it does it just right, go, oh, that's what I need to be doing. If they have to try to figure it out looking at the video, sometimes I wish we had that like button, not to overuse it, but just to kind of point out the good ones. But maybe that's not helpful because they haven't done it yet.
Yeah. AI is all about which data do you listen to, and figuring out which humans to listen to is a big
Chuck or Robert or me.
Even when you get out of self-driving, there's actually an AI that watches your spam on Gmail. I met the team that did that, and they explained how they bias user behavior. Everybody actually has a little secret score on Gmail that you don't know that. And it's how good are you at putting things into the spam folder? And also a separate score is how good are you at taking false positives out of the spam folder? And if you're really good at those scores, then you get more feedback into the system and you're improving the system for everybody else. Now, it's an interesting software challenge to get all this little tiny feedback.
In that same sense, right? They could probably decide who's the best driver based on whatever criteria that they decide is a good driver. And I think they've already said before that the safety score is actually not necessarily the best way, but it's a hell lot better than what the police do, right? Which is stopping at a stop sign or speeding, which neither are necessarily correlated with accidents and death.
Yeah.
I got my Zen score up when I realized what it was actually doing, which is judging how Zen are you.
What do you mean?
How relaxed are you? How calm are you? Are you, aggressive? Are you following people too close? You get a lower score, right? If you go around turns too fast because you're going in a rush, right? You get a lower score. So if you're really Zen and you're like, oh, I don't care if I get there, I'm just going to be like a little old lady in Pasadena.
But eventually, and in fact, I think it's actually happening now, they can actually see because they track the accidents, they can actually see what really contributes to accidents. Is it driving slowly? Maybe not, but driving slowly when you're turning, that might have the most correlation. Yeah,
that was one of the pieces of data that came out at the Investor Day the other day. Did you see that chart of the accidents? So they have the data on all the accidents, which direction was the car hit? From the side, from the back, or in the front. And they have all that data, and they're using that data to make the system better. It's really interesting.
Chuck, why don't you explain what they talked about the seatbelt tensioning and the
So this is the sum of a good example of what Tesla's secret sauce is, that many of the OEMs that don't have OTA updates, over-the-air updates to their cars, just will never be able to compete with until they do. And Tesla has done it on multiple occasions now. I think they were able to improve their consumer report score on braking with a software update that is unheard of, right? And they got an update in their score in the same year with a revised score based on data. So the seatbelt pretensioner is essentially using new technology that Tesla has with vision. And vision, I guess they are able to very accurately, and then Elon said I think he said with 100%, but nothing is ever 100 with vision, with very high precision, know that an impact is going to happen and is no longer avoidable with automatic emergency braking, anything else. And they're using those milliseconds to pre-tension the seatbelt, to tighten you into your seat just a little bit more. It's so that when impact does happen, at the probability they predicted, you won't be jostled in your seat as much, which does cause a little bit less whiplash, a little less body trauma and shock because you're snug in your seatbelt. And probably more importantly, it allows a slower and more timely deployment of the airbag that is less traumatic also. So imagine an airbag being able to blow up just a millisecond slower and in front of you before the impact actually starts to occur. Whereas every other accelerometer-based impact tool is working in the milliseconds after detection. To deploy only the airbag, no seatbelt pretensioning that I'm aware of after the accident. There may be some cars that could do that, but I'm not sure.
Can they use the same system to actually stop the car faster and actually prevent the actual collision?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's what AEB is basically trying to do up to the point that it can.
Ford's head of safety told me that they instrumented a bunch of fleet cars at Ford, and they found that 80 in accidents. So when a human being hits something in front of them, a tree or another car or whatever, 80% of humans have not applied full braking pressure. So you've not scrubbed off, even if you're going to hit a tree, you've not scrubbed off all the energy you could scrub off if you had a computer doing it. So they're going to save lives by slowing down the momentum of hitting something, and then doing this kind of stuff. It's like having a camera on an iPhone. It can see that it's going to hit something before the car even hits it and start doing all this work. It's just amazing what you can do when
if you have a toggle and the toggle says, okay, I'm going to, in my settings of my car, and the toggle says, make sure that I agree that I want the car to never hit anything. I don't want to hit a tree or basketball pole or people. Now, if I toggle that on, I'm giving the right to the car to do that. Do you think that's going to be risky to me if I do that? Or why don't we have that as an automatic feature for every car to never hit something?
Well, first of all, there's some situations that you just can't avoid. If somebody runs a red light in front of you, there are some situations where you just can't avoid the accident. Mercedes says that told me the autonomous car should never make a mistake and hit somebody. If it does, it has made 100,000 or a million mistakes before the impact. Right? But this kind of technology of understanding you're in an accident, let's do things to save the lives of the people inside is really pretty interesting field of study. And
well, that's one of the AI paradoxes, right? Who to save? I mean, it's one of those programming challenges that if you're given the choice of, one child or one old man, which do you choose if you're able to discern between the two? And there is no answer to that. It's a paradox, but these things do have to be solved at some level of decision making.
Yeah. With with traction control tires too, all of our braking systems now are anti-lock, right? So if your car has put on full braking pressure, it still is controllable by the human being or by the computer, and the computer is going to try to figure out great outcomes. Which path to take to have a better outcome, and so we haven't seen that.
So do you guys think that
yet.
these?
I'd love to get the simulator and see what kind of training they're doing for different kinds of wrecks and stuff like that, and see how they're training it to take a better path through the scene.
Do you see these safety features being rolled out? I understand that they'll be rolled out outside of full self-driving beta, Robotaxi. It's just going to be a new feature for the car.
Oh, actually, they usually roll out in production before FSD. Matter of fact, FSD 10.13 is, I think, on the 16 line, and they're already in the 20s on production line. Usually these safety features, and even the show your blind spot camera movement, that's in a build ahead of FSD.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. What other features do you think could happen for safety that they're learning because of the training for FSD?
Oh, you mean, well, that's a good one. I mean, obviously, the implementation of vision, taking out radar is another one of those twists to where radar may have had some safety features that they're having to refine with vision to the level of precision that radar had. Yeah. If we get a radar back in a dedicated Robotaxi.
What I find in stop and go traffic on a freeway, I find the vision system is a little harsher than the radar system was. It stops and starts a little bit harder. It's getting smoother over time. So when we get this new update, it'll be interesting to see what improvements they make around the vision system. But the vision system's pretty cool. Somebody came into my lane on the freeway, and my car just went boom right around. Real quick. And it's really amazing when you have it and your car does stuff like that. It really buys you a lot of trust.
So that's what I'm saying, right? I think that, I know I've asked you guys this question, and I'm going to ask it again, which is, how long do you think before FSD is ready for Robotaxi or a version of Robotaxi? Both of you, surprisingly, even though you guys are a little further out than I am, but if it does take,
I say 4 years,
if it takes that long,
regulation, because you're going to need enough testing, enough miles to prove to the regulators.
So wouldn't they roll out safety features ahead of time and take all of this stuff and maybe not call it Robotaxi, but it's going to be like the safest frigging car in the world?
Oh yeah,
because it supports you. Instead of saying it's going to help you drive you, but it's going to be able to support you to have less mistakes.
It's already keeping you from doing stupid things. If you're on the freeway and you fall asleep manually driving and you're going across the yellow line into the divider, it starts
because it's got the in-cabin camera, which I don't know any other car that has that, and it's already watching your eyes and where it's going. If you look at a mobile phone, it'll flag you and it'll buzz and everything. Just that alone, it's like people aren't talking about that quite yet, but that's a huge safety feature.
Yeah, several other cars have it. Matter of fact, some of them are implementing maybe a more open version than we have, still having to do the steering wheel tug. Is the GM Super Cruise, I believe. They even have the ad where the guys are clapping because they're basically showing, look, we don't have to use hands in our implementation of this, whereas Tesla's still got the torque sensor.
But on fewer miles. and only on certain stretches of road.
And that's what that's a good segue into answering the question to you, Herbert, is that's a constrained operational domain, Robert just defined, a certain number of miles, a certain speed, and a certain area that they've defined based on either the maps or the type of road that they're able to detect they're on, maybe based on speed. I do not think Hardware 3 will get to Robotaxi. I've said that. I haven't changed my mind on it. Hardware 3 is camera limited in my mind. It's processing power limited. We already know that. Can they optimize it? Yes. Will it continue to get better? Absolutely. Will it get good enough for a regulator to allow it to get to the spots where it's very good? I don't think so. I think that it will continue to evolve, but removing the driver is such a big step safety-wise that it'll be challenging. Now, if they do an operational constrained domain, I think it could. There are definitely parts of the world and parts of the country where it could get from a parking garage one day to the airport. Okay, that's fine. We could probably solve that, maybe with some HD maps if we can't solve some of the obstructions. But is it ready to get from everywhere that a Tesla owner owns it, in all of the weird scenarios that might have evolved
in snow on a dirt road, right?
And honestly, I do want to make that's a good safety announcement that you mentioned there, Scoble. There's a lot of Tesla drivers out there got FSD that have not been through winter yet. FSD does not know snow. Yeah. And honestly, if you live in the Northeast, it does not know leaves very well either. Leaves can fall at a certain very rapid time of year. They obstruct curbs. The drivable space gets obscured. Do not assume it knows where the drivable space is on the edges of the boundaries, and don't let it get too close. You'll curb your tires or run over a median or something like that. Yeah. And snow, it doesn't handle traction right. It does not. It didn't last year. I can't say that they haven't fixed it. They have had some Canada miles driven.
I drove up the Grapevine on ice right before it was closed. And
good. That's good. It's just a warning and caution.
It does well in some places, but it will turn off eventually, particularly when you get a layer of ice on your sensor array.
So what is hardware for? So, what exactly is it? Better cameras, more cameras? What are you expecting?
Well, we're pretty sure, and we know it's high-resolution cameras. We've seen the specs that have been ordered through Samsung that we know they're getting, that is most likely going to be a hardware 4. I mean, obviously, they could be for Semi or Cybertruck or something else and not called hardware 4. I think we know hardware 4 is the next version of the T chip that's going to have higher bandwidth processing power and capability there. It's probably going to have some more video inputs. Those video inputs could imply more cameras, or it could just be additional bandwidth for the cameras they have, because a high-resolution camera will require more bit rate just to process the amount of video that's coming through at the frame rate they want. I'm really hoping that they move the B-pillar location, but my gut deep down is afraid they won't. It's just because of timing. I do think they're going to have some more parking camera sensors, because there are some odd blind spots that the top camera can't see below the fender, that they might do some additional sensors down there for parking. In general, that's it. I really wish they could find a way of getting a camera on the front or a high-resolution radar that can see 90 degrees to the side, just because I think it would take it from better than a human to superhuman. And that's what we're striving for, right? And when people argue with me about the B-pillar location, it's my point that to be superhuman, you need to have perspective better than a human, right? Don't make an inferior perspective and tell me it can be superhuman, because it can't. It can accommodate and it can process faster, but it can't see as much.
Yeah. When you say the camera can only see 80 meters, I met a piece of the autopilot team, and they said their philosophy is if you can see it with your human eyes, the camera can also see it. So that's
the stated range.
And I know
site for that camera, and that's all I've used there. I have not seen the feed from the B-pillar other than what Green the Only has put out. So that is where I got that info from. If you have more information, I'd love to hear it. But
no, I'm just thinking that it's still seeing something even outside of that range, because there's still a couple pixels, that are lighting up.
Be resolution, right? 80 meters.
Toward you, right?
Yeah. Well.
It could be a confidence thing for sure. With AI, it's a confidence thing. How confident are you that's a car coming at you?
Yeah. Robbie, you've done enough work with AI, I know, to know that you cannot get the confidence factor required with 3 pixels. It's going to require something. You could say something's coming and it's coming at me this fast, but I don't know what it is yet. To get into the 8s or 9s that they probably want for identification of vehicles and things like that, I don't know how many pixels it takes, and the whole bag of dots thing, or bag of points is a little bit of a mystery to me. Yeah. I'd love to learn more about it, but a high resolution will just only help. Whether or not it's required or not, I don't know, but it'll help.
What do you guys think of September 30th, AI Day 2, Karpathy left? What's going to happen there, and what kind of announcements or discussion regarding AI and Robotaxi?
I think we're going to see a tour of Dojo too, of the Dojo computer, which is up in Washington State. It's a huge data center full of computers. So I'd see a little bit more about that. But the data that this company is collecting is extraordinary. A Tesla goes across the Golden Gate Bridge every 10 seconds and is uploading data from that experience. So what the hell is going on with AI with the data? Because it should be very exciting in terms of what they're able to do now of recognizing things.
So, Robert, did you hear Elon's comment about the GPUs versus Dojo from 2 days ago? So he said Dojo is almost crossing their GPU crunching power, and he said it should be there soonish. So you seem to know somebody that says it's running. Maybe why don't you talk a little bit about what it means to cross the threshold with Dojo that we're currently doing with NVIDIA GPU banks?
The AI computers that Tesla has built are more aligned with the workloads of the Tesla system, right? So it's a more efficient computer at building the models that we need to build to answer some of these constraints.
If it's designed to be faster, so then if we're not crossing the NVIDIA GPU processing power yet, does that mean they just don't have enough Dojo chips in parallel to do the same work that we have lined up for GPUs? Or are they still needing to tweak Dojo in order to optimize it so it's better than current GPUs?
Probably both, and probably their silicon strategies are coming on board, and they're starting to replace GPU computers or expand their data center with more of their computers rather than buying NVIDIA cards.
Well, I didn't hear that part, Chuck, because I heard him say that it's the third, possibly the third largest supercomputer in the world. He's talking about the existing NVIDIA system that they currently have. So when Dojo comes, there's no way that they're going to be able to say, oh, it's not as good. They're going to probably say it's probably the fastest supercomputer in the world. That would be a massive branding, marketing message if they're able to say that.
What he said might need to be picked apart by somebody and listen to it very, very carefully, because there's probably a lot of information in that statement. But what I heard when I heard him say it was the Dojo system that they have up and running is not quite doing it faster than their NVIDIA setup, but it is going to cross that threshold soonish. That's exactly what he said, something like that.
Yeah.
So why it's not there yet, that's what I was asking Robert, if he thought they just needed more of those T-chips stacked up, or
they're continuing to build out and add computers to this data center. It's a huge data center up in Washington. It's like 2 million square foot, which is I was in Facebook's first data center. That was a 300,000 square foot data center.
Yeah.
That was pretty big.
Yeah.
So the sizes of these things are pretty immense. And I hear that they bought a lot of NVIDIA compute for their first trainings, right? And now they're switching over to their own silicon strategy. And it just takes time to, buy more. You don't want to throw away computers you just paid, $2,000 to build, right? So
I'm a little disappointed.
It's a process.
So if the way I thought about why they're announcing an AI Day 2, clearly it's for recruitment, absolutely. But you only want to announce it if you got big announcements. Like there's some very exciting things, like Dojo is now online. And then take a look at what our capabilities are for a robot and real world AI. Yeah.
But what does that mean? What I think he's going to show is what does it mean to have Dojo, which is let's walk through the simulator again and do it this year compared to last year. I believe this year you're going to be walking around neural radiance fields inside the simulator. So everything is much more photorealistic than it was last year. That alone is going to blow people's minds, because last year's walk around the simulator.
Well, again, my point is that if they are saying that, Dojo's not quite there yet, it's going to be soonish, then why did they call this meeting except to say that I'm going to have a recruiting meeting every year, regardless of where we're at? And that would be disappointing to me. I thought that I was hoping that the reason they called this was because they said, there's something big is about to happen. And that's why I'm excited to, let's show it their world.
Yeah, something big is about to
You just said soonish. That's why I'm going. There's no way they're going to do September 30th AI Day 2 and not say Dojo's live, Dojo's better, Dojo's number one supercomputer in the world.
Don't forget the image that they showed of what they announced AI Day with was the bot hands. Yeah. So this could be focused around where they've gotten with the bot since they announced it just a short time ago. They may have something working,
Which all right, let's talk about the bot. The whole advantage of the bot is the data set that they have. The ability to walk down a street in the simulator and have it feel like a real street and look like a real street, and then be able to talk to God and say, make it rain, make it snow, make the street have mud on it. I mean, the simulator is pretty sick and is a secret weapon in the development of the robot. Because if you want the robot to walk out of a car and into somebody's front yard and ring the doorbell, if that's something you want to do, you have to train it on a lot of different front yards, right? And have it make the right decision every single time of how to get to the front door and ring the doorbell with a pizza in their hand.
Yeah.
Because that's what this is going to be used for, really. It's transportation as a service.
Herbert, to not worry you any, so I would just to further that NVIDIA GPU, let's just say that they have 1 million NVIDIA GPUs for processing power. They only have 100 Dojos, and they're getting ready to cross the threshold. That number on itself is just going to show when we're 1 million Dojos that it's going to be unbelievable. And to cross that threshold of Dojos doing it better than these 1 million NVIDIA GPUs with those made up numbers, I think it would be amazing. And the bot will be able to use it. FSD will be able to use it, just processing that valuable data. And also probably really accelerating the auto labeling capability that they have now and just taking it to the next level. So that the speed and auto labeling should really just let them use all of the data.
Who's going to do the presentation if Karpathy's not there?
Maybe Ashok, or maybe a couple of the others, probably, if it's about FSD. If it's not, if Ashok's going to be specifically FSD, I don't know if they're going to have someone hired between now and then, but I thought, that this would be a great time for the new leader of a team to make his presence in the recruiting platform. Yeah. But if there's not anybody hired as the director by then it may be Elon talking.
I'm of the believer that Karpathy was known to have left even before he went on his sabbatical. And so it's not like they're looking to hire anybody. They've already made that decision. And that's why if they make the announcement, I'm going to do AI Day 2 on September 30th, they're not like, I'm not going to do that if I hadn't already hired a top person. Yeah, so
I agree with that. There's other things they could have bought. They didn't. So they already have an answer to that question internally. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I have at the shareholder meeting, just talking to folks that are pretty close in, everybody was convinced that it was just Andre wanting to go back to his academic safe space and work on things and probably not loving leading large teams and dealing with goal performance management and all of the things that are required as being a director of a large company. We talked about that, I think, on Twitter a few times.
All right, let's. I don't like hearing your predictions, guys, because you're such gloomy people. But when is?
Do not take our measured stance on this show.
I'm a bull.
High for
okay, AI. Let me describe it to you. So I'm not saying Robotaxi point to point. No, human walk into a car, nobody's there and drives me there. I'm talking about a very specific, drive me from my home to my work and my work to my home. And I'm going to let Robotaxi do that just for that specific direction.
Are you in the seat?
I'm in the seat. But the insurance and Tesla will allow me to sleep if I wanted to.
That's an interesting threshold between the SCE labels, because there are some caveats of alerting the driver to take over that can be done, I think, at a level 4, I believe. Yeah. Level 5 means you're not required to be there. I think if you're in the seat, even hardware 3 could take you a long way within 2 years. I think that it will be very good in most scenarios, probably in another year, if we start working on parking lots and these endpoints that they haven't even touched yet.
Yeah.
If they're not working on the beginning and end of these trips, then you're just going to add another year onto whenever it's ready.
What did you think when Elon said, somebody asked him, is it going to be geolocation like the others are? And he said, no, or it's going to be like,
no.
Yeah, tell me how
that's the new AI that's being built now. And it's not just being built by Tesla. When you talk to autonomous car people, they brag that their car can learn so fast that it can drive down a street it's never seen before. Right? That's now the bar to compete in this new AI world. The days of the Waymos and the Cruises that are owned by GM that are geofenced, those that can't drive across the Golden Gate Bridge yet. Only Tesla is able to go across the Golden Gate Bridge, not the old style systems. They're geofenced to where they've been scanned, right? And so this generalized approach starts worse, but it's like it's very disruptive technology because it's exponentially learning. So how many years do we have to see before it gets way better than a human? How many years is it going to be way better than a Cruise, even in a San Francisco street? It's not that many years. It's 2 to 4, right?
Yeah, we're 2 years in, and it feels like we're over halfway. But until we start working on all of the functions, it's not learning how to do parking lots if we're not building functionality for parking lots. So we're not even working on it yet. So if that ends up being really, really hard because it's kind of not really rule-based, there's not really any flow, there's not like laws to follow, you can kind of crisscross, you can back up, do 3-point turns. We're not even doing U-turns yet. A U-turn is a basic function to get out of the UPL.
Totally.
So until they can figure out lateral turn radius, we're using the B-pillar to be sure I can do a 3-point a U-turn without having to do a 3-point turn inside of traffic. And we still got some work to do. And I do think that the teaser Elon gave us with it will be able to use non-geolocated driving, he said on the next release, but that wasn't in the release notes we saw in 10.13, so it may be a subsequent release. That is the beginning of parking garages, parking lots, and all these unmarked locations to where it's going to do its own mapping.
Yeah. And if I'm thinking of AI Day as a recruitment ploy, now I'm going back to talking to all the engineers over my life, and what got them to switch companies? What got them to quit their jobs or steal people from one company and go to another company? And one thing that keeps coming up is the size of the data set. If you have a huge ass data set, engineers get excited about studying that if they're in the AI world, because that's what matters is the size of the data. AI systems are 10% algorithms that do the AI, and very important, right? To have a few math geniuses to build your AIs. But most of it is the data set you have access to. And Tesla has a car going across the Golden Gate Bridge every 10 seconds.
All right, so let me ask you guys a question here, because I'm getting confused on my own side, what I was predicting versus what I'm thinking. I'm going to change my prediction now. So he's been very, very confident. When I hear him talk about FSD and Robotaxi, and even bots, it's happening in his mind. It's happening.
It's happening in his mind.
And then he talks about it being point-to-point kind of thing. He doesn't. He poo-pooed the idea of a geolocation area. So my original prediction was that this year they were going to roll out more of a ride-sharing, human-driven Tesla taxi service, an Uber-like Tesla, but it's humans, that you would order through the app and they would drive you back and forth. Now, just to get practice, just to get to learn of how they use the app to order somebody and all that. Now I'm going, that's not going to happen at all, actually, because he said at the Tesla Owners Silicon Valley interview that they're not even thinking about ride sharing at all. And yet he still continues to talk about this Robotaxi coming. So there's a huge disconnect here. And how would you roll this out? How do you think that they will?
I think you're hearing what you want to hear. He's not saying Robotaxi this year. He's not.
No, I know. I didn't say Robotaxi. I totally agree with you. I know.
Well, you did mix it in the same sentence, and I do think that confuses people because, and I am a bull too, but I hear different things than everyone else hears with the words that are used. He did talk about the app being a combination of Uber and Airbnb. That was a little bit of a thought experiment you can extrapolate upon, which kind of gives you the I own an asset like Airbnb, I order it like an Uber, and I think that is a good analogy to take down. I think that I think that the dedicated Robotaxi he mentioned at Giga Texas opening was something, and he also started talking about a van, are two pieces of information that we don't have a thread to pull out yet. Yeah. Where does a dedicated robotaxi fit into this mission as compared to FSD city streets and the cars we're already driving? We don't know.
Yeah. And we're a few steps away from robotaxi. We're closer to getting feature complete full self-driving, which is a driver assistance package, mostly in that way. You got to look at the rate of learning, and that's why I'm going to watch the next few updates for how fast is this thing fixing these kinds of issues. I still think we're 2 years away, not 1 year away. Elon is always too aggressive, and I think this is a bigger problem than we really still understand. So let's say it's 2-3 years. Yeah. I still think you need another 2 years after it gets done to convince everybody it's ready to turn on, i.e. get through the regulation so that it can drive people around. So 4 or 5 years makes sense to me. So here's the competitive landscape. Is Waymo or Cruise or anybody else, a Zoox that Amazon owns now, or an Aurora or some other self-driving, or Wave, are they building systems that can learn faster than Tesla? Wave claims it is. So could it get there in 3 years? Sure. But now, who is the CEO of Wave? Who is Wave? Do you trust Wave? Do you want to be in a Wave? Mm-hmm. No, they don't. They haven't built any of that. Tesla, on the other hand, everybody knows Tesla's fun to drive. Here's a question I was asked by the auto industry in Detroit to go around America and ask, which is, are you ready to get in a car without a steering wheel?
Right.
Like a Waymo machine. Doesn't have a steering wheel. You can't touch this. When you rent a Waymo machine in San Francisco, they're already driving in San Francisco and Phoenix and some other places. You can't touch the steering wheel. There is no human control. You're along for their ride. They're taking you on the ride. Most people say hell no, a violent no, which Google already has the data to know that they're lying, that after 3 days in a full self-driving car, you'll never drive again. They already have that data. Yeah. Marketers, man, they have data 7 years in before anybody even thinks about this stuff. They have the data to prove this. I got that straight from the head of Google's R&D, who I had dinner with, and he explained how they got the data, which is sort of funny.
There are very few examples in our infrastructure system that is not on rails that has any scenario where you get in a driven vehicle without a driver. Elon likes to use the elevator operator analogy. Right. Of course, that was decades ago. But when you think about the number of places, even in the U.S., that does not have a driver, they're all on rails, and most of them are airport transportation systems. Yes. And rails is what I go back to that word again, a constrained operational domain. Yep. That constrained operational domain takes out a lot of risk and mitigation issues that you have to solve. If you unconstrain it, the risks are going to eat you alive in that last 5 to 10%.
Yeah.
I was talking to a farmer in Kansas one time about this question, and he said, I'm a narcissistic control freak, is what he told me. There is no fucking way that a little computer is driving me around. Right?
Yeah.
That's now, well, even with somebody like that, right, who has a very resistant attitude toward this new technology, right? Even he will, once he gets in one and sees how good it is, he's going to switch his mind. So I understand that. The second question, though, which is interesting, is, are you willing to get in a car that drives to you without a human in it? In other words, it comes to you, but then you have a choice of you manually driving it or using self-driving. Everybody switches their answer to yes. So when the Tesla robotaxi system turns on, whether it's in 3 years or 6 years, I don't care when it is, Tesla is going to have a zero customer acquisition cost. Because everybody knows they can drive the Tesla, and it's fun to drive. We've seen the videos of it beating Maseratis and Lamborghinis and Porsches. Yeah. They showed one at the Investor Day the other day of the Cybertruck racing a Porsche and beating the Porsche on a 0 to 60 race, right?
Yeah.
So we all know that. It's part of the lore of Tesla. So when the self-driving system turns on, we're all going to be going, yeah, let's rent a Roadster on that thing. Right?
I use that analogy, Robert, in my industry also, but take it to 3 dimensions. And I tell everybody that asks me that question about an airplane, I'm like, I think people will start to think about getting on an airplane without pilots after they've gotten comfortable getting a car without a driver. I don't think it'll be the other way around. Same question gets asked in a different industry, you know. Even though once you get airborne, there's less things to hit, there's a higher risk and more fear involved with being off the ground that humans just naturally have. But they're both interesting thought experiments to go down.
Yeah. I met Sullenberger, the guy who landed the plane in the Hudson, right? And you start talking, you see how many decisions he had to make after his engines got blown, and how long he had. He came on stage. So this talk was really interesting. He had a wraparound screen around the audience, and it started in dark, and it started with him asking for permission to take off from the tower.
Nice.
So it showed his plane on the runway, you know, on the tarmac, asking for permission to get onto the runway system. And he had a little conversation, and then it showed the plane taking off, and it hits the ducts. It says ducts hit. And then you hear Sullenberger starting to talk with the air traffic control, saying, hey, I just lost all engines. I need to come back home. And you hear that conversation. And then he walks on stage, and he said, right about here is where I spent the most time thinking about one thing. And that was what to tell the passengers. He said, I spent 5 seconds thinking about that. And that was the beginning of the speech. It's really amazing. But he spent 5 seconds just thinking about one thing, and that was, what to tell the passengers, which was brace yourself, which meant something very specific to the staff in the plane, and meant stuff to the passengers. They're not going to go and try to get their luggage down when you hear something like that.
So what are you trying to say? You're saying that there's certain things that humans are still better at than computers. It's going to take a long time for AI is going to take over certain things.
Trust is a funny thing.
Trust.
Right?
Yeah. I argue that there's a scenario, and the Sully scenario is kind of like who's going to die programming problem we talked about earlier. There is a scenario, and they demonstrated in the simulator that had a computer turned the plane around and landed, there might have been enough air altitude in order to get back to LaGuardia and land in the opposite direction. So that's an interesting one to think about, that if they had the ability in a dual engine failure to turn around and land immediately on the closest piece of pavement that you're certified to land on, the plane might have been able to land in that scenario, but he had the human decision-making time span that is measured in seconds, and now we get back to full self-driving where everyone says the computer can think faster. If we get AI to be real-world enough to use that processing capability, decisions can be made quicker in the right direction that could save human lives, even in the Sully scenario. But man, in a dual engine failure scenario out over the middle Atlantic where there is no runway and you still have to decide where and how to land, I still think I'd want a pilot.
It's still going to take a while. Okay. So let's talk about, so I was trying to get us to start thinking about the ways that this could roll out. You guys have both said Robotaxi end to end is not going to happen for 5 years, 4+. It's got a regulation. Does that mean that there's no in-between steps that they could take?
Leave the driver and enjoy more and more and more functionality for the car and the FSD subscription that you either paid for in full or are renting on a monthly rate. That is just going to continue the excitement of a Tesla owner and the features that they're going to come up with, like a seatbelt one. Those things are just going to keep on rolling. And if they can keep improving their sensors, driving in heavy rain, driving in snow, driving in all these environments are going to get much, much safer. Driving in the highway is going to get better. Driving in parking garages, reverse summon. If reverse summon ever comes, man, that is going to be the party trick of the century.
Yeah.
And then the demonstration of a Robotaxi in the tunnels is going to be the first thing. That's going to give a lot of people a lot of that, the trust, if slowly start building the trust and letting that car do it, because it's in a controlled environment, but it's still friggin' nobody's there and you're driving back really fast.
I video of it doing Highway 17 around curves with a bus on this side of my car and a wall on this side of my car, and it does it perfectly. Yeah. So we're going to see lots of fun demos of lots of things coming soon that people are going to be pretty shocked at. I mean, last night I was on a narrow road two-way road with one lane, right? So both ways had to go down one lane. And my Tesla did it perfectly. It's like, wow, is this amazing?
Okay, so I mean, let's talk Tesla stock and revenue, right? Again, he is so confident. You can hear him saying over and over and over again, this is going to blow your mind. The numbers are nutty. You can't understand how, won't believe the calculation. And I know, Robert, you've been talking about how the revenue of this. But again, it's just his confidence. I mean, like, would he really say that if he doesn't think it's going to happen in 5 years or 10 years?
Yes. Well, here's where the confidence comes from, right? If you buy a Model 3, let's say it's a $70,000 car. It's a top of the line Model 3. How much does that cost you per month?
Is he frozen?
Froze on me.
When you actually,
he froze.
What's that?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let's say you buy a Model 3 Tesla, which is $60,000 to $70,000 car, and you put down $5,000 on it, and you pay a monthly fee on it, and then you add up all the other costs, like wearing out your tires, your windshield wipers. I broke a window one time that cost $1,000, which insurance picked up some of. But you add up all those costs and you put it in a bundle. It comes to about $1,500 a month, right? Elon was saying, well, with Robotaxi, your car could be out working 50 hours a week. So let's say that's 200 hours a month. So you take 1,500 divided by 200, that's your wholesale cost of the car. If you're at Uber or Lyft, you have the same costs, right? Your drivers are covering the same costs if they're driving a Model 3 around town. But you have the human on top of it, which is minimum $15 an hour, minimum wage. So you're spending, somewhere around $20 wholesale for an Uber, which turns into $60 retail, compared to what, 5 to 10 for a Robotaxi. And he can charge more and get closer to the Uber. He doesn't have to undercut Uber at that rate. But he can undercut it by 40, 50%, and everybody will switch over because the Tesla is going to be more fun to drive. It's going to be a more consistent experience. It's going to be safer, and it's going to do things that the other guys don't do, like let you play video games in the car.
And there's also a scenario, Robert, that they can introduce Robotaxi in an Uber Eats style fashion to where it doesn't even have to take people around, and they can avoid human life loss by just having the cars go and get your food and deliver food for you. Car pulls up, you put the pizzas in the back, your car delivers a pizza, the people get the pizzas out. Humans don't even have to get in it. I bet people would adopt that like that.
But wouldn't you still need to get regulatory approval for that?
If you get to where it's actually, if you get to where it's actually driving your pizzas around, it's going to drive humans around because it has to be safe enough not to kill your family on the way to deliver your pizza. Right?
But that's regulatory approval to be on the road versus human adoption that I would get in that car without a steering wheel. Back to another point. It's a roadmap into it a little bit. You're right about regulatory. The road's the road. Yeah.
But the Tesla's going to have a steering wheel for a while. I mean, 15 years, 20 years from now, does Tesla have a completely driverless car as part of its, transportation as service? Probably. But for a long time, it's going to have this kind of choice where you get in a Tesla, you're going to be able to drive and get over that narcissism. Even that guy in Kansas said, I would get in a car that drove to me. I just want to be in control of it when I'm in the car. Right? Because there's that narcissistic attitude, I want them to have control of where I am. Right?
Yeah. It's the same feeling of, would you get in, how did you feel the first time you sat in the back seat while your children were driving when they were 14 or 15? First couple times you're like, but would you do it? A lot of trust. You trained them, and maybe they're going to drive in the neighborhood first, and then we'll go out on the highway. Another point I want to make is just something food for thought. There's a chance, and I was in Austin this week, and there was a lot of Uber drivers on this Hertz plan. Yeah. I think Hertz is not buying these cars for their customers to rent because they're leasing them to Uber drivers without selling them. I think they're building a fleet.
They're a fleet manager.
Hedging their bets that if Robotaxi is coming, they're going to have a Robotaxi fleet of their own. That's what they're doing.
And it would make a lot of sense because where do you want to use a Robotaxi? When you get to an airport on vacation, get picked up in a Tesla would be badass, right? Or have a Tesla waiting for you at the airport, part of the rental plan. boom, you get in it. I just rented an Audi in the UK at Heathrow. And so, there's so many scenarios that open up once we get full autonomy.
Let's dream a little bit. Okay. I know you guys are doom and gloom folks, but let's say that
you're looking for the hyperbole stuff, aren't you?
Well, no, let's assume that Robotaxi comes. We know that there's, I think, 235,000 deaths per year because of human drivers, human pilots.
More than that in the world.
In the U.S.
40,000.
And then there is a couple million, 2 or plus million people injured in all these accidents. This is every year. I think in equivalence, isn't it like 3 jumbo jet airplanes falling in the sky every day? So why are people not wanting to do this? And why are people going, it's got to be safe, got to be safe, got to be safe? Well, it has to kill
I can explain that.
Bunch of people. Oh, yeah.
Humans are not good at risk assessment. I mean, how many people have said, "I'm scared of getting in a plane, flying somewhere," where taking the car to the airport is far more dangerous than actually being in a commercial jet today.
Don't forget, it's not a 1-to-1 comparison either. It's if one human death is saved from one robotaxi, that isn't the equation for regulation approval. Human death in an automated system is just not tolerated. I mean, even one,
Why?
So the threshold, well, it's because somehow our culture, and maybe it's just part of being human, that to err is being human. Therefore, it's
okay if a human goes to human.
Mistakes. No, I'm just saying it's accepted. We grew up that way. Your mom told you and your kid, it's okay. We make mistakes. But for an automated system, it is not acceptable. That's why all this fun with Teslas gets so much attention, because it's a computer's killing us. I don't know, maybe Terminator led into this culture or something like that. But
I actually celebrate every night that robots don't kill me. I give them millions of chances, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, you take your hand off a steering wheel on a Tesla, you're giving it millions of chances.
So in addition to the safety, right? So I'm willing to let a system get better and better and better because of the ultimate goal of eventually you're going to stop all these deaths. So let's say you stop the deaths. It takes us 10 years to get there. Well, every year, that's 2 million people of being maimed and injured, removed and reduced forever.
That's assuming that the entire fleet of vehicles gets autonomous, which is decades.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, but I have a friend who has a 1929 Franklin in his garage. He's still going to drive around, even if all new modern cars all came with this technology.
Eventually, they will outlaw humans driving, right? But what about all the other benefits? Right? So eventually, you're not going to need as many streets. You're going to have parks everywhere. He talked about that. What other wonderful things could this world become if you think through?
Going to like the ferry building in San Francisco today costs $50 to park. Why? If you have a self-driving car, it will drop you off and then go
find somebody else. It doesn't never have to park.
Right? And supercharge while it's doing it, right? Go to a supercharger 10 miles away, go charge for you.
CO2 emissions, utilization, livable space. And don't forget, higher utilization also means higher precision once the fleet is converted. Therefore, tolerances and traffic flows, you'll lose the frequency wave traffic flows that happen today with rubberneckers and everything that slows down. That can be managed autonomously, and traffic flow will be, the throughput of our existing road system will be higher with automation. There's many, many benefits that automation brings.
And if transportation is near free, why wouldn't you just any person can go anywhere for almost free, and then that productivity and
the cost is a lot less. It's not free, but it's a lot less. That's the way to look at this.
If it's lower than the rate of inflation, then it ultimately becomes more affordable over time, just like the internet, just like electricity and many other things. It's a decreasing commodity. Unfortunately, just like airline seats, in my business, they keep going down over time. But
and when this happens, getting my ribs delivered usually costs about $10.
Exactly.
Now, right? In an autonomous world, it should only be about $2 for
transportation is the biggest component of the cost.
Situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most people also can't visualize or understand, and I have trouble with it, so I'm not going to pretend to, but Elon talks about it, about how an economy with automation, such as the bot, introduces a nearly unlimited labor, and how unlimited labor increases GDP because of the cost per capita going down so drastically that essentially you're changing the denominator of an equation in order to achieve higher economic output. And it takes a PhD level economist to probably articulate that better than me, but it's fascinating to think about.
This is, by the way, a major reason to push autonomy into your economy, because it will make you much more productive and much more.
So countries will be fighting to be the first to let it happen in their cities.
Yeah, the countries that push it and allow it to happen, and China certainly will become more productive at making things and moving products and services around.
Yeah.
Let factories serve bigger areas too, because now they can transport their products or goods a further distance.
The math is borne out in manufacturing today. You can use that as a thought experiment. Just say, look at the manufacturing, look at the robots, look at the humans that are not required, yet productivity is going through the roof. That's the basis, but spread that across an economy with all the way down to ditch digging and trash collection and all of the jobs that an economy requires to be a functional first world society, and it's unbelievable.
Okay, so Chuck, you chastised me before when I used the word solve. You're not going to use the word solve, but when Chuck's left turn is to the point where nobody cares anymore, what are you going to be doing? Is it going to be a Chuck turnaround? Is it going to be a Chuck
the U-turn?
The U-turn test? What's next?
No, listen. There's so many different things that we can drive. Listen, and I'm not going out here and trying to tear it apart. Obviously, I flex a little bit to what people want to see, not necessarily what I want to solve. I enjoy the video composition. I enjoy learning about my car and extracting the CAN data. I enjoy trying to explain difficult situations to a large group of people so that the knowledge spreads. But if the UPL, the unprotected left turn, gets solved, or it gets so much better that nobody wants to see it anymore, I'm going to focus on obstructions. I'm going to focus on U-turns, like Robert said, or other scenarios that just aren't working as well as they could, because it's obvious I got, Ashok and his FSD team's attention just with the detail I'm providing, because just like any pilot likes to do a post-flight analysis of their flight and learn something every single day, I think the level of detail I'm putting in my videos, even if it's not my words, it's just the content and display and accuracy for multiple persons' views, is better than for them to see the real world test in QA than their simulator can provide, short of flying here and driving with me. So I think it just gives them a little bit of a data point.
One thing I'm hoping for, and I haven't heard a hint yet, is when does each car communicate what it's seeing with God, with the Tesla Dojo?
Elon talked about it this week. There was a customer question about the car-to-car communication. He referenced fighter aircraft talking to each other, and Elon referenced it, being in the future, and that they are thinking it through and working on it. Didn't talk about the technologies and the frequency spectrum.
That's how, at least here in Silicon Valley, there is literally a Tesla like every 10th car.
Yeah.
I mean, so you start thinking, if there's a Tesla in the group of cars that's coming toward you at 80 miles an hour, can it communicate with your car what it's seeing? If it could do that, then we could really fix the rest of Chuck's problems.
But the things I see today, Starlink would be global communication. I'm thinking car to car within radio range type of communication that would be localized and then cellular transmitted back to mothership. But the things I think we could benefit from right now are potholes and retread rubber on the highway going 75 miles an hour. If you're not deviating within the 3 seconds behind the car, that's dangerous. And going across a pothole at 45 miles an hour in itself is dangerous, depending on the size of the pothole. If the Tesla in front of you saw it either manually or autonomously, that's amazing data.
I hit a bucket in the road going 80 miles an hour in lane number 1. I steered around it, but man, it didn't. Autopilot didn't see that, didn't do the right thing. And sure enough, we should see those kinds of problems fixed once we get this communication from car to car.
I use Waze
it's real important.
When I drive to Orlando, object on road ahead, and that's how I'm getting away with it. And I keep, every time I get object on road ahead, 30 seconds later, there it is. I'm like, why isn't Tesla doing that right now? It just seems so logical.
Okay, well,
that's what I'm hoping.
Guys, this is a whiplash a little bit. You guys are both the futuristic people that are most in touch, yet you say, this is what it can't do. So we will get there, and I'm going to prove you wrong. We'll prove you wrong.
That's what we do. Right. That's why Chuck is so interesting, because he flies perfect. Planes. He has that kind of discipline of understanding how it's learning, how it's thinking, what are the problems still to be solved. And it's an interesting.
It's going to be an exponential curve. But anyways, thank you both for participating in this. I'm pretty proud that I had the two people that I do think has the most knowledge of what's happening. You're both very famous. So Robert is known for wearing the Google glasses in the shower. And then Chuck is known for being name called in Chuck's Left Turn. I'm nobody. I need to be like somebody that becomes somebody. So I need to be as famous as you guys someday.
You need a bot named after you. You need to go out and pick up the next bot.
What's the bot? I want to be the first person, doing something with a bot. So I'm working on it.